Samuel, we have moved into 2 Samuel chapter 2 to see David begin to take the throne of Israel from the deceased King Saul. David is met with opposition. As I told you before, this takes years for the transfer of power. Which family, which tribe in Israel will reign supreme? Remember, Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. There's 12 tribes total in Israel, and Saul was chosen by God from the tribe of Benjamin. David is from the tribe of Judah. And there will be infighting in Israel, civil war, for several years, 7.5 years, until David will finally take the throne of Israel, all 12 tribes. It takes a long time because the tribe of Benjamin says, wait a minute, our son Saul was king. Our son, a Benjamite, was king, so the throne has to remain with Benjamin. We know from the book of Samuel that God had already ordained David to be the next king of Israel, who's from a different tribe, the tribe of Judah. So there's an infighting and a civil war that takes place over several years in Israel. Tribal warfare. Who is the rightful king? It's sad to me that, I'll just say this, that David had the one tribe of Judah who followed him, his own tribe, but the other 11 tribes kept following a man of Saul, either a specific man of Saul or at least the family of Saul, thinking even though we don't have a king on the throne, we still follow the family of Saul and Saul's leaders, General Avner and others. It's sad to me that those 11 tribes of Israel apparently never went to the high priest and said, what does Yahweh say about this? Who does Yahweh want to be king? They never make that. They never offer that question to God. They never ask that. They simply fight for the right to hold on for the house of Saul. But you never read in the scriptures that any of them went to God and asked, Lord, is it David? Should we be behind David? Is it time for the transfer from the tribe of Benjamin to the tribe of Judah? Is that what you want? If they'd have read the scripture, they'd have read in Genesis chapter 49, verse 10, that the scepter would not depart from the tribe of Judah. It had been foretold. But does it matter, after all, what Yahweh wants? I mean, for us, mighty men on earth, who cast our own votes, who decide we're going to vote left, we're going to vote right, we're going to vote centrist. Does it matter what Yahweh wants? Does it? To 11 tribes in Israel for 7.5 years, friends, didn't matter. Isn't that amazing? For 7.5 years, it didn't matter. They never went to the high priest and asked, what does our God want? The God who came across, who brought us out of Egypt with the 10 plagues, parted the Red Sea, gave us manna and water from the rock and quail from the east. What does this God of ours want, who sent the hornet in with Samuel or with Joshua and defeated the nations before us, gave us cisterns and houses and fields and vineyards and everything that we would ever need, who set us up perfectly? What does this God want? Who does He want to be king? And 7.5 years went by, and 11 tribes of the chosen people of Israel never asked once what Yahweh wants. Astounding truth. Tribal warfare instead. Instead of bowing in humility to God and His plan, I'll kill my brother. It's just insanity. The carnal mind. 2 Samuel chapter 2 verse 1, we're just going to read several verses very quickly. It came about afterwards. What's the afterwards? After Saul had died and David had understood that Saul, his father-in-law and his king, was dead, and that his friend Jonathan was dead. After that, it came about that David inquired of the Lord. Now, isn't that interesting? Who goes to God and asks, what shall I do? David does. 11 tribes, not once. But David inquired of Yahweh, and he said, shall I go up to one of the cities in Judah? Remember, David was living in the Philistine area. David was living down here in Ziklag. It's not written on the map, but it's about right here where the red dot is. And he wants to know, is it time for me to move back into Judah, into Jewish-held territory? I've left Jewish-held territory because of the king. He wanted me killed. And so I left is it time now that the king is killed, dead, is it time for me to go back into Jewish-led territory? So he asks God, shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah, my own tribe, or is it still unsafe? What do you want me to do, God? I know I'm your king. You anointed me when I was 12 years old. You had Samuel come to my house. I know I'm the next king, but I don't know if now's the time. I don't know what you have in mind. You lead, Father. I'll follow the greatness of David. Shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah? And Yahweh said to him, go up. So David said, where shall I go? And he said, to Hebron. So David went up there, he and his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. At this time, David has 7 wives. A few years go by, David has 6 or 2 wives. As years go by, David will continue multiplying wives. Not a perfect man, is he? But a man after God's own heart nonetheless. But this is in direct violation of the Mosaic law that one man and one woman should be husband and wife. And David already is in violation of that with his 2 wives. Not uncommon for kings to gather wives. So he has 2 wives at the time. David brought up his men who were with him, each with his household, and they lived in the cities of Hebron. Verse 4 says, then the men of Judah came. This one tribe out of 12, one tribe comes to David, and they anointed David king over the house of Judah. Remember, 12 tribes total, only one decides to be with David. The other 11 tribes are still following the house of Saul, what they consider the dynasty of Saul. Look at what I've just put up here. Look at this map. I should have also colored in Simeon, but all of this area now, including the people of Simeon, this tribe had dispersed within Israel by this time. But all of these people are still following dead King Saul. They want Saul's family to have the dynasty. They want Saul's son, or a representative of Saul, to be the king of Israel, not David, the son of Judah. That's what David's up against here. 11 against 1. All the 11 tribes still following the house of Saul, even though Saul is dead. And so we have 2 tribes that are vying for power in Israel. The house of Judah, the tribe of Judah, to which David belongs, and just to the north, the little tribe of Benjamin, where Saul, to whom Saul belongs, that's Saul's tribe. And these 2 tribes will fight for years to determine who will be the next king. The north, the 11 tribes are in the north are following a man named Avner. He's the commander, the general, if you will, of Saul's army. When Saul was alive, Avner was his general, his first in command. He was over the army. And as often happens, it happens today, you'll have military coups in different countries where you have a political president who's taken down in power by the military commander, right? And the military will take over control of the government. Well, that's kind of what happens here. This is an ancient thing. This isn't new in our years in which we live. This is ancient. And what happens here is Avner, the commander of the army, assumes authority, handpicks the successor to Saul. That's exactly what we'll see here. They told David, in the end of verse 4, David is the king over one tribe, only Judah. There's turmoil in Israel. David finds out something about Saul's body. It says it was the men of Yabesh Gilad who buried Saul. So David finds out that even though the Philistines had done horrible things to King Saul's body, he finds out it was the men of Yabesh Gilad who honored Saul. And so David sent messengers to the men of Yabesh Gilad and said to them, "May you be blessed of the Lord." He asked God a special blessing for the men of this city for their courage in going to properly handle the body of their king, King Saul. It says, "May you be blessed of the Lord because you've shown this kindness to Saul your Lord and have buried him. Now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you. Not only shall God do this, and I'm asking Him to do it, but I will also show you goodness. He says, I also will show this goodness to you because you've done this thing. Remember, Saul was not just David's king. Saul was David's father-in-law. And so David had a great appreciation for what these men had done for his father-in-law, King Saul. He says in verse 7, Now therefore let your hands be strong. Continue to speak to the men of Yabesh Gilad. Let your hands be strong and be valiant. And here David gives them a little hint. For Saul, your Lord, is dead, but the men of Judah have made me their king. And as I am honoring you, I'm being diplomatic and asking God to bless you for what you did for the last king. I'm asking you to support the new king. It's me, King David. The house of Judah has anointed me king over them. I could use your support. But there's a problem, and in verse 8, the problem is introduced. It says, but in contrast to all this peace and prayer for blessing and all the rest, you've got this military commander, this general in the north, Saul's man Avner, who has machinations of his own, right? But Avner, the son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken matters into his own hands. What does it say about David again in verse 1? David inquired of the Lord. Where does it say in verse 8, but Avner, after having inquired of the Lord, having been told by God that Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, should be the next king. So you don't read that, inquired of the Lord. It's not there. Let me remind you of one thing you may have lost track of. Saul's been king for 40 years. How did Saul become the king of Israel? Because God was happy with Israel and granted them a king after His own heart, or because Israel was in complete defiance of God, Yahweh, and completely turned against God and said, we no longer want you to be king over us. We no longer want to be this weird nation that doesn't have a human king, but has a divine king and all these judges. We don't want that. We want a king like all the other nations. We want you to appoint us a human king who can lead us out into battle and back in victory. We want a man. Is that good or bad? Well, see, that's horrible. And God gave them exactly what they deserved. He gave them Saul, who ended up being a failure, a disobedient, idolatrous failure of a king. And here's David fighting these people. Nothing has changed in Israel. The heart is still the same. And that's who David is up against. David is following his God. The 11 tribes are following their own hearts. And Avner, the commander of Saul's army here, he had taken Ishbosheth, a man whose name means, remember, a man of shame is what it means. Ish is the word for man. Ishbosheth is a man of shame. And Avner, the commander of the army, had taken this son of Saul and brought him over to Mahanaim. Mahanaim is east of the Jordan River. It's in this area here, on the wrong side of the Jordan. Here's the Jordan River, on the east side of the Jordan River. That's where he takes this Ishbosheth and makes him king. Look what it says in verse 9. The commander of the army appointed a king. Not God, the commander of Saul's army, in this vacuum of authority. We don't have a king. We must have a king. I'll take care of this. I'll appoint a king. Very self-centered, strong, selfish leader, this Avner. He made Ishbosheth, Saul's youngest son, king over Gilad, which is on the east side of the Jordan River, the king over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, even over all Israel. So all the other 11 tribes, now that Saul is dead, his commander of the army has swooped in this vacuum of authority and said, I am the power here. I'll pick this guy, even though I know he won't be a great king, but I can control him. Isn't that interesting? Happen today? where strong military leaders or strong nations put up a puppet regime because we can control them. Happens all over the world. You could argue that it happened in Ukraine several years ago. It happens all over the world. The United States. I don't say anything against my country that I love and I'll die for, but clearly in our imperialism, the United States has propped up king and emperor all over the world, people that we could control. Puppets. We've done that for, 200 years now? People have always done this. It's not just the USA. There's nothing new under the sun. People have done this for millennia. We're seeing it here. A commander has chosen someone that he can control. Avner, again, strong, selfish leader, looking out for his own interest. He would love to be king. What's the problem? It's not Eastern tradition. Who becomes the king? The king's son. Not the commander of the army. That's not how they did things there. The king's son, according to Eastern tradition, would become the king. So even though Avner may want to be king, and there's no question he does, he's not qualified. He's not the son of Saul. So he picks a son of Saul, Ishbosheth. He sets him up as king as a puppet. He'll only last for 2 years. He appoints someone to the throne who's not fit to lead Israel, but whom he can control. Verse 10, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, a little biography here. It says he was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he was king for 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David. You know what's interesting? If you have something like this, a chart, I think I've given you this before. It's probably on the back table. This is a chart of the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah. Remember, because at some point under Solomon's reign, after Solomon, the kingdom would split. But it's interesting when you read of all the kings of Israel, when they are together, all the kings of Judah, it's interesting that there's one name that's not on this list. What's that name? Ishbosheth. His name, do you see it? No, because he was not a legitimate king of either Israel or Judah. He's not a legitimate king. He was propped up by this Avner, commander of the army. He was Avner's choice. He was never God's choice. Even though the scripture said he was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, he was an illegitimate king, not named by God. And so his name never shows up in anything. I bet you'd never heard his name before. I bet you never knew that there was a king between Saul and David, this Ishbosheth. He doesn't show up in history. When we read about the 3 kings of Israel, we read Saul, David, Solomon. You never read this man's name. He was not a legitimate king. He was propped up by the general of the army. It says he was king for 2 years. He held the title of king, not the divine authority of king. The house of Judah, however, followed David. So again, you've got 11 tribes who are following the house of Saul, the tribe of Benjamin. They want one of Saul's people to be king, so they allow Avner, the general, to put this Ishbosheth into place. And that's what we have here, the beginnings of civil war in Israel. The time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah, the one single tribe, look how long David only ruled one tribe of Israel. The years or the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of only Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Somebody tell me, how long did David reign as the king of Israel? Saul reigned for how many years? Saul, David, and Solomon all reigned for the same number of years. How many years did Saul reign? 40 years. How many years did David reign? 40 years. How many years did Solomon reign? 40 years. What I want you to remember is that 7.5 of David's 40 years, he only ruled one tribe in Israel. For 7.5 years, he was only in control of his one tribe, Judah. Verse 12, it says, now Avner, this is the commander, the general, the bad guy, this strong, powerful military leader think of someone like Fidel Castro. The only thing that Fidel had over Avner was that there was no political succession of kings in Cuba. So when Fidel had his military coup over Batista there in Cuba, he could also become dictator. Not only commander of the army, but dictator of the Cuban people. And that's what he did. Avner didn't have that opportunity. He had to put up a puppet, a son of Saul. These things happen in every generation constantly. That's what's going on here. Avner, it says in verse 12, a very interesting event takes place. It says he went out. That means he had war on his mind. He went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon with the servants of Ishbosheth, the sons of Saul. So he's got a group with him, the Benjamites, the sons of Saul. He's their commander. Verse 13, what about David's commander? It says, and Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and the servants of David went out. So you've got an army marching from here, a small group, and an army marching from here, and they will meet here. So Avner is on one side, on Saul's side. Joab is on David's side. He takes the servants of David, and they met at this pool of Gibeon. It says they sat down, one group on one side of the pool and the other on the other side of the pool. Now, I'll show you a picture of the pool in just a minute. Don't think community swimming pool. That's not what this is. But look what it says before we get there. We've got two army generals. I want to introduce the second one. We've already talked about Avner. We know who he is. Who is Joab? Joab is David's general. He's David's commander, and he also happens to be David's nephew. It's interesting in the Hebrew, whenever you read the son of, the son of, the son of, it's usually speaking of this person's father. It says Avner, the son of Ner. Ner was Avner's father. Av means father. His name means my father is Ner. But when you see Joab, it says Joab is the son of a person named Tzruiah. Hard to say, T-S-R-U-Y-A-H, Tzruiah. And this is not a man, this is a woman. Anybody know who this woman is? Why, she's David's sister. Look what it says in 1 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 13 through 16. This is David's genealogy. It says, Jesse, who is David's father, became the father of Eliab, his firstborn. Remember, this was the one, Eliab came into the room when Samuel was there, and Eliab was big and tall and broad and handsome. And Samuel said, surely the Lord's anointed is before me. And God said, no, no, no. Man looks on the outward appearance, Samuel, but I look on the heart. You're looking at his structure, but I want a man who thinks my thoughts after me, and it was David. So here are David's brothers. Jesse became the father of Eliab, his firstborn, Abinadab, his second, Shemaiah the third, Nathanael his fourth, Radai his fifth, Ozan the sixth, David the seventh. And their sisters, here she is, Tzruiah and Abigail. Now this is not Abigail, the one that was Nabal's wife, the one that saved David in 1 Samuel 25. This is a different Abigail. This is David's sister. He has a sister named Abigail. By this time in the story, he also has a wife by the name of Abigail. But David is the son, the seventh son of Jesse, and he has a sister named Tzruiah. And this is the woman that are named here. It says the three sons of Tzruiah were Avishai, there should be an I in there, Abishai, Joab, and Asahel. Recognize the middle one? Joab, the commander of David's army. These three sons of Tzruiah would be part of David's mighty men. They would be David's three fiercest soldiers. They were all his nephews. Their loyalty was unmatched because they're family. And blood's even thicker than water, isn't it? We're about to see one of these men let his courage get the best of him and become a fool and die here in just a minute. But Zeruiah had 3 sons, and these were all army leaders. Avishai, Joab, and Asahel were all David's top 3 mighty men. And these men were impulsive. They were strong and courageous, but they were impulsive and would cost David much heartache, as we'll see very soon. Impulsive men, Joab especially. Impulsive men who would do foolish things and cause David heartache. But they were also the most loyal in his army, so they were his leaders, his commanders, his generals, his 3 nephews. That's who these men are. That's who the players are as they approach this pool, the pool at Gibeon. The pool of Gibeon, look at this picture. There are a few people there. I don't know who they are. I've never been to this pool. It's in Israel. But I didn't have to black them out because they're so little you couldn't tell who they were anyway. But this is what we're dealing with. Some natural structure, some deep hole there in Gibeon that everybody knew about. So you have one group of men, Joab and the men of Jesse on one side of this pool, talking across this pool, which at the time was filled with water. Men on the other side, Avned and the men of Saul, and they are going to come up with a situation here to try to discover who is it that's to be the next king of Israel. Is it the tribe of Saul? Is it the tribe of Benjamin, Saul's people? Or is it the tribe of Judah? Avned will offer a suggestion. And that's what we see in verse 14. It says, Then Avned said to Joab, so don't forget who starts this war. Avned is the one who says, let's fight. Avned said to Joab, now let the young men arise and hold a contest before us. And Joab said, okay, let them arise. This is a fight. So they arose and went over by count, 12 for Benjamin and Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. So Joab has chosen 12 of David's mighty men. Avned has chosen 12 of Saul's mighty men. And we're going to solve this right now at this pool. We're going to go 12 men against 12 men. Whoever wins, winner take all. That's the idea. Is that odd? To solve the question of who will be king of God's chosen people on earth by a hand-to-hand combat? Is that odd? Is that the way God does things? No, the answer is Yahweh had chosen a successor to Saul 18 years earlier in his own home when Samuel came to David and anointed him king. Yahweh is orderly. Yahweh doesn't do things like this. He's already anointed David to be king. He doesn't need men to fight to determine who would be king. This is a ridiculous event. And look how it ends up. Each of them seized his opponent by the head and thrust his sword in his opponent's side, so they fell down together. So imagine this, me and Terry fighting. I'll never fight Terry. He'd destroy me with one hit. But imagine Terry and I fighting. We each have swords. We're in very close hand-to-hand combat. He's scared already. I can see it in his eyes. Or maybe he's not. But we each grab each other's hair at the same time. We each thrust a sword in, each of our swords into the other guy at the same time. It's a ridiculous contest, and God sees to its ridiculousness by having all 12 of them kill each other at the same time. Now, we're not sure whether they fought one at a time, me and Terry, and then 2 others, and then 2 others, until they got rid of all 24 people. But the end result is all 24 died. It's a tie. It's a push. It's a draw. And if we can't decide who's going to be king by the fight of the 12 over the 12, then what must we do? Then the armies have to go to war. And so civil war ensues. All-out civil war ensues because Avned was unwilling to go to the high priest and ask, who does Yahweh want to lead His people, Israel? Instead, I'll kill my brothers. And that's what we're dealing with. That day, it says in verse 17, because it was a draw and they had more war was needed to decide who would be king, that day the battle was severe. Brother against brother, tribesmen against tribesmen, and Avner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. Now, why is that? Why would God cause Saul's house to be beaten and David's house to be elevated? Who is God's rightful, chosen, anointed king? It's David. Of course the house of David is going to win. So the armies begin fighting each other. David's men kill more men than Avner's men do, or Saul's men do, as Yahweh gives the victory to David. If you'd only ask, I would tell you. What's the scripture say? Sometimes we have not because we ask not. If you want to know something, I got to read it. One verse. James chapter 1. Let me just read it. There's a very great statement in James chapter 1. Oh, I hate it when I can't find stuff. Went too far. Somebody help me. Oh, here it is. I went way too far. It's James chapter 1, verse 5. But if any of you lacks wisdom. Anybody know how to finish that? What's the obvious question? If you lack wisdom in this life, who do you go to find the answer? You go to God. The answers are available. James, the half-brother of Jesus, who lacked wisdom for 33 years of his brother Jesus' life, who didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah until the resurrected Jesus appeared to him, James says, should have done this a long time ago, but if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. It's a promise of God. You want to know something? You go to God with the question. And God says, I'll give you the answer. So here we have Avner, instead of going to God in a lack of wisdom, who shall be king of Israel? We've got not only him, but 11 tribes who refuse to go to God and find out the answer. Instead, they go to war to determine the answer themselves. We won't wait for God. We'll do this our way. And what does it end up? Dead men. Dead men. Dead Jewish men lying on Jewish ground that God had promised to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Tragedy upon tragedy here. Dead men. So, the battle was severe. And Avner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. And something happens with these three sons of Tzruiah. Look what it says. We will see one of her sons, Asahel, take matters even further into his own hands. It says, now the three sons of Tzruiah. Now remember, these men are on David's side. They are on the winning team here. But the three sons of Tzruiah were there, Yoav and Avishai and Asahel. You see the I is there in that word. Avishai and Asahel. They were there in the battle. They're David's three mighty men. They're the top of his commanders. And Asahel, it says of him, was as swift-footed as one of the gazelles which is in the field. This man could run like no other. So what does he do? It says, Asahel pursued Avner. It's not enough that we have beaten you. It's not enough that you have lost more men than us. I want you dead today. It's a courageous thing to cut the head of the snake off. But it was foolish on this day. Avner had been a commander of Saul's army for God knows how long. Decades. He was a mature fighting man. And Asahel was a young man, strong, brave, courageous, foolish, who simply took on, it would be like me picking a fight with Terry. Foolish. And that's exactly what he did. He fought somebody he could not beat. He knew it going into this. But somehow, whatever gets into a man when he gets crazy and thinks, I can do this, that's what got into Asahel here. And so he pursues Avner, a much stronger fighting man, much more mature in the fighting military arts. He did not turn to the right or to the left from following Avner. So here's the picture. Avner is in a chariot. He's leaving the battle site. He's been beaten. His army is getting crushed. And Asahel, instead of letting him leave, runs after him. Avner looked behind and he said, "Is that you, Asahel?" These generals know each other. He said, "Is that you?" And he answered, "It is I." So Avner, listen to this, not one chance, but two chances. "Stop chasing me, young man. I have respect for your family. I have respect for Yoav, the commander of your army. I have respect for your mother, Zeruiah. I will kill you if you keep chasing me. So stop, because I don't want to kill you." And you'd think that would be enough. Avner said, "Turn to your right or to your left." Listen, kid, if you are intent on killing someone today, kill one of my soldiers. That's what he says. Stop trying to kill me. It's not going to happen. Not today and not ever. Turn to your right, turn to your left. Stop chasing me. Focus your attention on someone else. Take hold of one of the young men for yourself. We are in battle. This is legitimate. If you have the taste for death in your mouth, kill them. You cannot kill me. It's not going to happen. Take for yourself his spoil. He's offering up his own men. Kill them, leave me alone. It won't end well for you. But Asahel, David's nephew, was not willing to turn aside from following him. Avner gives him another chance. Verse 22, Avner repeated again to Asahel, "Turn aside from following me. Why should I strike you to the ground? How then could I lift up my face to your brother Yoav?" There's a respect between the generals. Respect between the generals. Life is an intriguing thing. It's like in the American Civil War, where you had a respect, maybe not a love for sure, but a respect for the office of a man like Ulysses S. Grant and a man like Robert E. Lee. They would have never taken up arms against each other. Their armies killed each other, slaughtered hundreds of thousands. But those two men would have never taken up arms against each other. They had a respect for the office. They were the generals of their respective armies. And you have it here. Yoav and Avner respect for the top echelon, the top brass of the military. And Avner says, "How do I face your brother Yoav if I kill you today?" Which is intriguing. As the armies are killing each other, I want the respect between you and me and your brother to continue. Avner was superior in battle skills. He knew it. Asahel, passing others on the battlefield, chasing the chariot of Avner, had a micro focus on this one man that he could not beat. You have to at least ask the question for a moment, what happened to this man? What got the best of him? Was it pride? Was it arrogance? Was this desire to bring Avner's head taken off of his body back to his uncle David and said, "Here, I've settled it. You're the king of Israel." I don't know what got into him, but he made a foolish decision. Whatever it was that was exactly his motivation, it cost him his life on this day. Brave man, courageous. But you got to know what fights to fight, what battles to fight. He chose the wrong one. Verse 23, however, it says he refused. So Asahel, given 2 opportunities by Avner to turn away from him, to kill somebody else, he refused to turn aside, and therefore Avner struck him. He struck him in the belly with the butt end of the spear, so that the spear came out of his back. And he fell there and he died on the spot. Avner alive and well, Asahel, the nephew of David, dead on the battlefield. It came about that all who came to that place where Asahel had fallen and died stood still. David's army is chasing this other army, but when they get to their commander, one of their 3 commanders, they get to the great Asahel, they see the spear pierced through his body. The horror was enough to stop the men in their tracks. They could not continue the fight. But there's 2 men that pass right by the body and continue chasing Avner. Who would they be? The brothers. Because now, not only is this civil war, but you've killed our brother. And you'll pay for that. This thing is just crazy. It's got Hatfields and McCoys and any other relationship like that you can imagine. It's got them all rolled into a passionate fight. It says in verse 24, but Joab and Avishai pursued Avner. These are Asahel's brothers. They see him dead. And now they want Avner's body dead. When the sun was going down, they came to the hill of Ammah, which is in front of Giah, by the way of the wilderness of Gibeon. They've traveled a long way chasing after Avner. They are not stopping. He's killed their brothers. It's a day of vengeance. Verse 25, the sons of Benjamin gathered together behind Avner. These are Saul's people, the tribe of Benjamin. So they stop. Organize their army. They gather behind Avner. They become one band there, and they stood on top of a certain hill. So you've got 2 men chasing them, and all of a sudden when the men would find them, they would see an organized army. You sure you want to fight this fight today? Avner called to Joab, because Joab and Avishai have stopped when they recognize Avner and his gathered army in battle formation. They stop, and Avner says, let's call a truce. You can't beat us today. You too can't beat my gathered army. Yes, you have won the battle, but now that we've come from the battlefield to this place, my army has reassembled that was retreating. We've reassembled against you 2 men. You cannot win. We'll kill you both today. Let's call a truce. Respect at the general level. It's an amazing thing. Avner called to Joab and he said, shall the sword devour forever? Are we going to keep killing each other today? Do you not know that it will be bitter in the end? You can't win this today, Joab. You can't beat my army here. How long will you refrain from telling the people to turn back from following their brothers? The battle today is over. And Joab said, you started this fight. It says in verse 27, Joab says to Avner, one side against the other, David's man talking to Saul's man. Joab says, as God lives, if you had not spoken. Remember who started this? Avner. Let's choose 12 men each. Let them go to battle, winner take all. You started this today. I didn't come for war. You instigated this war. Joab says, if you had not have spoken, surely the people would have gone away in the morning, each from following his brother. We wouldn't be in this mess. But now we're in it because of you. But he knew, I can't win this. And so Joab blew the trumpet. And all the people halted. This is David's people. They halted and pursued Israel, Saul's people, no longer, nor did they continue to fight anymore. So a truce had been called for this day's battle. And this war that was started would continue between the house of Saul and the house of David for almost 10 years. 7.5 years would go by before this was finally settled. Verse 29 says, Avner and his men went through the Arabah all that night. So they crossed the Jordan. They were going eastward. They walked all morning, and they came to Mahanaim, their site on the east side of the Jordan River. So Saul's men retreat and go back to Mahanaim. What about David's men following Joab, his general, his nephew? Verse 30 says, Then Joab returned from following Avner. When he had gathered all the people together, they count the dead. 19 of David's servants besides Asahel were missing. So David's side lost 19 men. But the servants of David had struck down many of Benjamin and Avner's men, so that 360 men died. 19 for David, 360 for Saul. The first fight was overwhelmingly in David's favor, David the anointed king of Israel. Why did God allow this civil war to go on? I don't know. Probably a punishment for the disobedience of these 11 tribes. That's my guess. I don't know why God allowed 7.5 years of civil war, but he did. Israel being disobedient to his own plan to have David in the tribe of Benjamin take over the throne of Israel. Verse 32, so they took Asahel, their dead brother that had the spear in him. They buried him in his father's tomb, which is in Bethlehem, David's city. Of course they buried him in Bethlehem. If Zeruiah, Asahel's mother, is David's sister, then Zeruiah's city is Bethlehem. That's where Jesse's family was from. It's where the family burial site is. It's where the boy would be buried, the man. So they took up Asahel and they buried him in his father's tomb, which was in Bethlehem. And then Joab and his men went all night until the day dawned at Hebron. They went and buried the man in Bethlehem, and they carried on until they got to Hebron, which is where David's army was headquartered. So much for 2 Samuel chapter 2. Now read ahead with me in 2 Samuel chapter 3 for next week and find out one of the greatest flips in allegiance in history, when Avner will totally flip sides, switch sides, and see to it almost single-handedly that David would become king over all of Israel. The same guy that just killed David's nephew Asahel, the same guy who started this fight at the pool of Gibeon, 12 against 12, the same guy who set up Saul's son Ishbosheth to be the next king of Israel, this same guy is so offended by something that Ishbosheth tells him that he said, I'm done with you, I'm flipping a switch, I'm moving all my allegiance to David, and I will see David crowned king, and I will see you killed. Impulsive people, yes? Read ahead in 2 Samuel chapter 3. We'll be there next week, and we'll see the story. Let's close in prayer.